In this video, we are going to create this MagnatesMedia animation.
In the early 90s, Max became fascinated with a gift he received, an early computer system. Max taught himself how to write and develop programs for it. And throughout college, Max explored ways to use the internet to improve his own life and the life of those around him.
So, firstly, what we need to do is to gather our assets. Here I have all my assets, and the first asset, of course, is this old computer. So, to find it, we need to go to this Sketchfab website. And I was lucky because here on Sketchfab they have precisely this model that MagnatesMedia used. You should just press download and you should choose this blend format. I will explain right now how to transfer it from Blender to After Effects. So once you've downloaded this blend file, you open it, and here you need to get rid of all the unneeded stuff, the camera and the light. We only need these 4 cubes. We should highlight them like this. We should go to File, Export, and we should press wavefront.obj file. So here we choose our designated folder we need, and we need to check some boxes here. So firstly, this one, selection only. This means that we only export the selected assets. We don't export this, for example, or whatever else that could have been here. Then we need to check this, object groups, material groups, and we need to check PBR extensions. And then we press export OBJ. Here I go to After Effects. So now I open After Effects and I create a new comp. So here I will just make a 1080p and 30 frames per second comp. Now what I can do is I can put this to the bottom so that we have a reference while we are animating this stuff. Now what we need to do to actually create this 3D model of a computer. So we need to press new solid like this, and we can make it black. Now we need to apply an effect called Element 3D. It's not an effect, it's actually a plugin which allows you to work with 3D models inside After Effects. So here we need to press Scene Setup, and we need to press import, and we need to go to our folder where we saved our computer model. For me it's called old PC, and I just press import. Here I leave all the default settings and I press OK. Once it's imported, you can see that it's super tiny, super small. So to get rid of that, to make it normal size, we press normalize size. So here I want to do a couple more things. So firstly, I want to make this computer less yellow. I want to make it like a colder color, this grayish white, like this. And I want to press OK. Now I want to choose this material of a screen. And what I need to do, I need to put some image on it. And this is how we should approach it. So we choose the material, and here we choose custom layer 1. And we will work this custom layer 1 right now. But what I also like to do here, I like to make it glossy. So we just up the glossiness to the max here. You see, now it reflects the environment. And by the way, there exists an environment that we can choose. There are several default options, you see, so you don't see this environment, but it just reflects in the screen. Makes the image more interesting. So doesn't really matter what we use, we can just use this one. And here we're done. We press OK. And let's create a new camera, and let's create a new null object to control the camera. Let's call it CC1, meaning camera controller 1, and let's duplicate it a couple of times. Let's link the camera to the null so that every null controls the previous one and the camera. And let's make them all 3D. And let's go to frame 0 and orientate the computer the same as it is orientated in the MagnatesMedia video, like this, something like this. Doesn't need to be exact. Let's hide it again. So now we need to put something on our screen. To do that, we need to create a solid again, and let's rename this to PC model so that we don't get confused later. So we create this solid and we import this gift icon, make it a bit smaller like this. Now we just pre-compose them and we just basically hide them. We go inside here. We rotate this to 90 and we give this motion tile effect like this. We put output width to 700 like this, and we need to keyframe the position so that this gift icon slides. So it starts sliding on frame 0 and it ends its motion like second 15 or 16. So it's animated by Y like this. Let's give it some motion blur so that it looks a bit smoother. And here, what we need to do now is we need to go to custom layers. We need to go to custom texture maps, and we need to choose precomp 1 as a layer 1. And let's rename it to screen texture. Here, I would like to also create an adjustment layer and give it a TV pixel effect. So it looks a bit pixel like this. Basically, I think this is the perfect setting. You see that our image is too huge right now. So we need to do something. We need to fix it somehow. To fix it, we need to go to scene setup again, like this. And we need to go to our material. We need to go our custom layer. And we basically need to play with these parameters. So I have put the parameters we need in the node here. So gamma 2, brightness 115, gamma 2, like this, contrast -5, saturation -8, UV repeat 458 and 708, 458, 708, like this, and UV offset 005 to 55, 005 to 55. I think we can increase the UV offset just a bit, like this. And now it looks almost perfect. But the final thing I like to do to this screen is to make the image green. And to do that, we again go to our material, we go to our diffuse color here, and we just make it green like this. And here you can play with parameters. So basically, if you increase diffuse, it makes it a bit brighter like this. And now we have our computer screen, which looks great. And you can see if we play our animation, it is animated until the 15th second or so. And here to the bottom, it has this cool glow, which makes it stand out a bit. So to do that, we again go to our element 3D layer. And here we need to go to render settings. And here I think it's glow. So we need to enable glow and we need to choose luminance here. And you see that now it glows, like the whole thing glows basically. So we don't need that. We need only the highlights to glow a bit. So to do that, we need to increase our threshold like this. Let's make half resolution probably. See now only the highlights start glowing. So the more threshold you have, the less parts of this object glow. So let's make it, I think, like this. Intensity maybe 1.5, and we need to up the radius a bit like this. Maybe increase, maybe lower the threshold. No, the threshold is perfect. We need to play with the radius. So because the background is black, we don't see the glow properly. So let's create a dark green background, put it here, and now we see the glow. Maybe we need more intensity like this. Maybe 2, and maybe more radius. So it's a bit blurry like this. I think this looks pretty close to what we had in our original.
In the early, Max became...
Let me know in the comments, does it look close or not? Okay, so what we've done so far, we have created this computer model, which looks really close to what exists in the MagnatesMedia video. So now we just need to animate it, right? By the way, if you didn't know how to put 3D stuff and create such virtual computer screens inside After Effects, make sure to check out our paid community Edit Hub that we do together with Axopreneur and MegalMedia channel owner Kevin. In this community, we teach you how to become a paid editor from zero, get better at finding high-paying clients, and refine your editing skills. Inside Edit Hub, you will have access to detailed After Effects and Premiere Pro courses, as well as client acquisition courses. Also, we do weekly calls and one-on-one coaching, so make sure to click the link in the description. So, firstly, let's create the background. So, here, the background, here you can see it has darker parts and it has also lighter parts, which are revealed in some kind of pattern, right? So, I'm not sure how exactly the editor made this effect, to be honest, but I'll just do it like maybe a bit different way, but still to look good. So, let's pre-compose that, the dark green we have, and let's go inside and let's duplicate it a bunch of times like this, and let's make this one a bit darker, something like this, and just delete these two, duplicate this. Now what we need to do, we need to mask this thing like in a random blob shape. We need to give it feather, so press F to give it feather, and give it feather of 300 like this. Now you need to apply turbulent displace effect, and you need to keyframe the evolution So just show you, you find this option, evolution, this stopwatch, you press Alt click and you type, let's say 100. So it just evolves, you know, like a cloud a bit. So now you just need to go to mask, to the mask path like this. You keyframe it on frame 0. You go to roughly 15th second again, and you just can do something like this, you know, or you can, I think that works. We don't even need to make it eased. Works linear, I think. And let's make a couple more blobs. So this one we can make like more stretched out, 300 again. Just copy the turbulent displays from the previous layer and just to all the other layers as well. And here just again keyframe the mask path. So from the first frame to 15th second like this. You can also, you know, change the shape a bit if you want to, but it's a bit extra. So, you know, you don't need to do that, but you can if you want. So now move this down, and it's important that you move the path itself, right? The path, not the layer, because if you move the layer, this is what will happen, and you don't need that, so you just move the layer. So let's see how they look together, right? So maybe just reverse these keyframes so it goes from the bottom to the top, so there is a bit more randomness. And, you know, just let's create like a smaller blob like this, probably. Feather 300 again. Animate the path again. So, yeah, like this. Doesn't really matter how you move it. Lastly, we create something like this. Give it feather. And again, animate the path like this. Probably like this, right? So let's see if this is not too much. Yeah, it looks like I intended. You see, just some random shapes moving around, looking like clouds or smoke. What we can do here is we can reduce the opacity a bit to like 70, so it all looks a bit more, you know, a little less contrasty. And the last thing that I want to do here is to create one more solid and to apply grid to it. Here, what I want to do, I need to do this width slider. This width works. And here I want it to be like super dark green, probably like this. And let's see how it looks. So I think we need to make it smaller even, like this. Looks better, but the border is too thick, so we'll make it 1 instead. It looks proper in my opinion. So this solid is a good color, but I think the opacity needs to go down a bit like this. And this one is too bright, so let's make it all 50 or so. Now it looks about right, so now this needs to be 100% opacity. So here, let's start animating our stuff. By the way, we need to move this background to the back a bit, right? Because we would want to have this parallax effect. So we need to move it by like 1000 pixels. And we need to enlarge it just so that we don't see this edge, right? So let's make our grid a bit darker like this. And now let's start animating. So firstly, we need to animate the first rotation of the camera. So let's just solve it and see how it looks like. So it ends like on between the 5th and 6th second, somewhere here. So let's just create a position keyframe here and an orientation keyframe on our camera controller 1 that we created previously. And let's hide our reference for now. So here, let's press U to see what parameters we already animated, and let's create keyframes on both position and orientation on frame 0. So, and we need to position it a bit to the right, like this, and probably make it like a bit closer to us. And this position looks good. So you see, it's almost the same that we have in the original one. We of course ease it, like I just did, right? So I highlight the keyframes and I press the ease keyframe. For you, it's most likely F9. For me, it's W because I remapped it. And what we have next is we have this zoom out. So we'll use a different null object for that. So let's just keyframe the position here and let's end the animation here like this. By the way, it's still a bit turned, so it needs to be like 3 degrees. It's about right here. So
system. Max taught himself how to write and develop programs for it.
To make the motion quicker, we need to highlight these two keyframes. We need to press this button, Graph Editor, and we need to make sure that we are editing the speed graph like this. So we highlight these two keyframes here, and we are creating this shape.
Taught himself how to write and develop programs for it.
This looks perfect. So as you can see, it starts kind of slow, it ramps up really fast, and it drops down really fast. And what's important is that we make this overlap between keyframes. So while this motion is still happening, it's still turning a bit, it's like finishing its motion, we already are beginning the new one, like this, you see? So it creates just a bit of a flow, like interconnection between the two movements, like this.
The system. Max taught himself how to write and develop programs for.
So let's just save our project. So next up we have this animation where these two arrows are created, and we will see these write and develop boxes. And let's create that. So to create these animations, firstly let's find like the first frame where it happens. So it starts here. So let's choose our pen tool and let's create a shape like this. We need it to be stroke only, white. So if you, for example, have fill chosen, you can cycle through options with Alt click like this. So you have gradient fill, no fill, then solid, linear gradient, radial gradient, and again no fill. And same with stroke. So you can have different options, but we just need a solid stroke. And we need to make it thinner, like 6 pixels or so. Okay, so we have created this first shape. Now we need to create the second shape, like this. So we have an arrow. And now we need to create the second arrow, again, like this, and a new shape, like this. What we need to do now, we need to make all these layers 3D, like this. And now what we need to do, we need to orientate these arrows so that they look right about the same that they did in the original animation. So to do that, we just need to scale them down a bit, like this. And we need to move them to the left, like this. Scale them down a bit more. Let's check where the animation starts in the original animation. So it starts on this frame, like this. To animate arrows like this, we need to create a trim paths. We choose this first arrow and we need to press trim paths here, like this. And we need to animate the end property. So we create a 0 keyframe on the start of the animation and 100% on the end of the animation. And we just find the second arrow here and we paste the keyframes. So now, as you can see, you can just animate the same. But again, I believe that these arrows need to be a bit further from the computer. These arrows need to be further as well, like this. And we need to give all 4 elements of the arrows motion blur, so they are animated a bit smoother. And when we are approaching like the finishing position of this arrow, what we should do here, we should animate the scale, because that's what was done in the original animation. So we need to go from 0 to 59% scale.
How to write and develop.
And you see that it behaves weirdly, it just shoots from somewhere here. And this happens because we need to adjust the anchor point. So to do that, we need to go to Layer, Transform, and we need to press Center Anchor Point in Layer Content, like this. And now it's all fine, you see? It grows from the center like this. So just find the second arrow spike, this part. Just copy the keyframes and go to the last keyframe, press Layer, Transform, Center Anchor Point, and Layer Content, same. So right now, by the way, I dislike how the background looks. It looks a bit too bright, so probably we would want to make this darker, like this. And we want to make the opacity lower, also like this, maybe to 20%. Now I think it looks a bit better because there is more contrast this way. Okay, so let's save it. So we have created the arrows animations. It shoots out like this. And let's check what is the next camera animation. So it shoots out, but the motion doesn't stop. So it's already like the next zoom out is already starting to happen here. You see, somewhere here they have a keyframe overlap. So here I would say is the end of the zoom out, and here they created 2 more keyframes that zoom out more slowly, so there will be 2 more camera animations. So the next one should start right here. So let's hide the reference for now. Yeah, and let's create our zoom out. So let's animate position in this case, and let's check basically where it ends. It ends somewhere here. Okay, let's hide it, the ref. Let's ease them, and let's change the distance here, somewhere here, I think. And let's give it a nice spike like this.
For it. And throughout college, Max explored ways.
Maybe it needs to be less drastic again. So maybe like this.
For it. And throughout college, Max explored.
This looks much better. So now let us just create these 2 boxes with write and develop words. So these animations, they happen right at the same time when the arrows are drawn. So let's just create like a rectangle shape. We don't need the stroke, we just need the fill like this, right? So, and let's create some text. I want Montserrat font. I want to use Montserrat font. Right. Okay, now let's make it black so we can position it. And in the original, it was a track matte like this. So you see that we can see through the letters. And we need to change this text to develop. I think the shapes are a bit too small, so let's just highlight both and let's just increase the scale a bit. Let's center it a bit better so it looks proper. This looks proper, I think. Here we need to center this a bit better. Yeah, it looks great. And let's just recompose this firstly. So we have this. Let's call it write. Let's pre-compose develop. And let's call it develop. So we'll reveal these 2 layers with masks. So it's very easy to do that, right? We just need to create a mask like this, a rectangular mask, and we need to keyframe it again. We need to press V to be able to drag this out, double click this, and drag it down like this. And we see that it obscures the arrow a bit, so no worries, just move it a bit to the left. And I think we need to make it smaller, like 60 or so %. And let's check how it animates. Basically, if everything's correct. Yeah, I think it looks great, but now we also want to make it 3D. I forgot to do that. And it's lost somewhere, so we need to move it back. And we need to check if the position is correct, so this needs to be 0, so they don't create a parallax effect. They are all on the same like distance from the camera. So I think to make it look a bit better, I want to move this to the right a bit, and I also want to move the right to the right, if that makes sense. So just in terms of the composition, like this. And we need to do the same with the develop. So firstly, let's make it 3D. Let's check the scale here. So 39, let's just copy it, Control C, Control V to develop. And we need to check the keyframes here. So we'll just time them exactly the same. So keyframe the mask path here, go to the last keyframe here, double click it, drag it down and ease them. So let's check. They are revealed a bit differently, I guess, but doesn't matter. Let's give it a feather of 5. Now let's check how it looks. We're changing the feather for develop. So it's this layer. Yeah, it looks about right. Let's change the feather to 5 here as well. And lastly, we need to give it a deep glow. So in the original, it was like super slight deep glow. It was like, I don't know, 002. So let's just copy paste this to develop layer, and you see that here we see this ugly cut, right? To get rid of that, we need to apply reptile effect to the layer, but we need to apply it before deep glow. So here we choose none and we expand to all directions a bit. And let's check if develop layer now has this problem or not. So look closely now. You see, if I disable, it just cuts out. So it's really important to do that so that your animations look more professional. And here you see the same, but we need to expand it down a bit, like this. And here also I see that it needs to be expanded down a bit. To copy all the settings of a certain effect, If it exists on a different layer, you can just Control C it and Control V it, and all the settings will be copied. Okay, let's save our project and let's check what we have. We have this really cool glow to all of this, but for some reason we see that our background is more in focus than our computer itself. So I think we need to play with our depth of field settings. We need to go to camera options. We need to manipulate some settings here. So let's see here, let's make it 2 views and let's put focus distance on the computer like this. You see, if we increase the aperture, the blur gets super strong, super pronounced, but we can just, you know, keep it at 20 or so. But we have to keep in mind that when we zoom out, we have to automate this focus distance parameter as well, because otherwise, you see, we zoom out and we can lose focus. Especially if we increase the aperture, you'll see it. So here, let's automate our focus distance. So we have a zoom out from this frame to this frame, and we need this right and develop to be in focus. So just move the focus distance somewhere here and ease them. And actually we can make the aperture a bit more. I think we can increase it to 50 and we can increase the quality to decagon like this, or even 75 or so. Right, so now you see like the objects which are closer are a bit blurry, so it all looks realistically. Very cool. I think that these objects, this arrow and this right composition, they need to go to the left a bit. So now we have harmony, it's all good. And now let's check what else we need to do to replicate the animation. We need to make a zoom out, obviously, and we will have our human figures. So we'll have this guy, we'll have these background guys, and some icons will pop out above their heads like this. And now while we are zoomed out, let's start adding our assets of people. So here I have gathered all the people figures. So this will be our main guy, right? And I'll show you how to make him look good in a second. So firstly, let's check if he flies out in the frame like it's intended. Right now he doesn't. So let's probably find our last frame of zoom out and let's move him closer and let's scale him down a bit like this. Move him up, scale him down a bit more, and let's check if he flies into the shot correctly. Yeah, now it's great. So we need to apply several effects to this guy now. So let's just solo this guy so that we can see him better. By the way, you see that we don't need to automate the focus distance now because this guy lands exactly on the focus point of the camera. He'll be in perfect focus and everything that's below him or behind him will be a bit blurry, right? So let's just enable one view again. And firstly, you see that this guy, he has some, let's say, artifacts. Here he has like an ugly white edge, stuff like that. To get rid of that, we just need to apply an effect that is called simple choker. And we just need to increase choke matte here, like this. I think 2 or 3 is about right. Now we need to apply gradient to this guy. Gradient ramp, it's called. So here we need to choose a radial ramp. We need to choose start of ramp here. And we need to put end of ramp here. I suppose the end of ramp should be, yeah, somewhere here, so that it's, you know, not as sharp. The transition is not as sharp. And here we need to choose this start color, which will be bright green, like this. And the end color would be dark green, like this, like darker green, like this. And now we can play with the endpoint again. Now it looks about right. So in the original animation, they had something like this.
In the early 90s, explored ways to use the internet.
So it was brighter blue in the center and darker on the edges. And here we have something that is quite similar. And what we need to do right now is we need to also give this guy a drop shadow so that it creates a bit of a contrast between him and the guys that will be behind him. So we'll increase the distance like this and we'll need to make it super soft. So you see something like this, just a slight shadow like this. let's save the project and let's create our, like, I call them NPCs, right? Just some random people. Drag them a bit behind, I guess, like this. But we need to make sure that they are animated correctly as well. Yeah, so this distance looks just about right, minus 500. So I think this guy needs to be a bit smaller, even maybe like this. Now, what we need to do is we need to put all other NPC models here. We need to give them the same Z-axis position, like this guy has, right? NPC2, let's get our NPC, I don't know, this guy, let's make him 3D, give him the same Z-axis position, make him smaller, like this, not as small, I think like this. Now, just these 4 more people, they are super huge. Okay, so we need to copy the position to all of them, the Z-axis position, like this, like this, like this, and like this. Now, let's hide those 3. Let's work with this guy firstly, scale him down, move him like here, I guess. Now let's enable this guy, put him here. And it needs to be 4 people on each side. What we will do, we just put these guys a bit to the back. Let's check if it animates correctly. No, they are already seen in this shot, so we don't need to move them back. We need to make them smaller. So just highlight all these people and just change the scale. But it all changes differently, as you can see, so we need to do it individually, I guess. So scale down these 2, oh shit, like this, and scale down these 3 guys, like this. This guy doesn't want me to highlight him, I guess. This guy, these 2, can move them like this, to the right a bit, and we have like two more people. So this is the first woman, scale her down, so move this woman here, and this girl needs to go here, and that looks about right. So this needs to be a bit smaller because she looks a bit like a giant compared to all these guys. Maybe she's really tall. Okay, so now we forgot to hide this computer and these things, so what we just need to find all the layers we need to hide. So firstly this one, which is the computer itself, and just opacity fade it to 0 and ease it, and copy these two keyframes, and let's find all our shape layers and stuff like that. So just shift highlight that, paste the keyframes, you see that they will all be hidden. And now we have two more compositions, which is develop and write. Paste the keyframes as well. Now it will all be hidden. And now we need to apply some effects to these people so they look more or less the same as they looked in the MagnatesMedia animation.
In the early 90s, Max became fascinated. College, Max explored.
They used some 3D models, or these were like pictures, PNGs, I'm not sure, but you see that they have this like inverted or negative effect, let's say. So it's really easy to replicate. What we need to do, we just need to like choose any of our guys. We need to firstly use invert on them so they start looking like this. You see, more or less close to what MagnatesMedia had. And now we need to this inverted guy, we need to also apply gradient ramp, but we can just basically copy it from our main guy. But what we'll need to change are start of ramp, which we'll put in the center, end of ramp, which we'll put somewhere here. But as you can see, we have lost this effect where we can see some detail from the original person, like facial features, some of their clothes, and here we just see the figure, and we don't want that. So how we can remedy that? We need to apply a tint effect. We need to move it before gradient ramp. We need to map white to this green, and we need to say blend with the original, probably like 25%. Now you see that this effect is more or less replicated. And now just copy all these effects to each of the NPC images, right? So just change the start and end color accordingly. So put the start of ramp to the center and end somewhere here, but they all should look more or less the same in terms of brightness. Now copy this to this girl. Oh, this is not a girl, this is a guy. Okay, so put start of ramp here, end of here, make sure he looks more or less the same in terms of brightness, and just continue copying this to all the other guys. And let's check what we have so far. So we have this computer animation, when the arrows animation, the text reveal with the mask, we have this zoom out, and now we need to create the next camera movement. So it needs to start right here when the previous one ends, right? So here we create a position keyframe and we just make it like several seconds until second 15, let's say. And we just need to move it back like this and move it to the top like this. And you see that we have our background cut out a bit. So let's see if we move the background to the top, if it messes up any of the previous frames. No, it doesn't. All looks good. So we need to ease that as well with the W key in my case, F9 probably your case. And here we need to animate the camera focus distance. So again, press 2 views. Here the focus is our guy. Yeah, so we need to create a keyframe for camera focus distance here. And we go to the last keyframe and we just move camera focus back to him. So he stays in focus basically. And now that's taken care of. Let's Control A to select everything. Let's U to compress everything. And now what we need to do, we just need to create these icons of
in the early explored ways to use the internet to improve his own life and the life of those around him.
So it's really easy. We just need to firstly create an ellipse shape with an ellipse tool. Make sure that nothing is selected. Let's create a shape like this. Let's make it 3D. And we need to make it here, to move it here. And we need to add motion blur, and we need to check the position here, and we need to make it the same. But you see now it obscures our guy's head a bit, so we need to move it a bit back. So it moves from from behind his body, like this. Now, what we can do, we can just move this globe, PNG, make it 3D as well. Actually, no, it's better to pre-compose them. It will be more convenient for us in the future. So let's just move this to the dead center. We don't need it to be 3D in this case, and just move both of them to the center like this, and make the globe a bit smaller. They need to be a bit bigger, I guess. Anyway, so shape layer, increase scale. This looks about right. I think we need to make this 3D. And now we move it behind the guy and we scale it down a bit. So it needs to scale down a bit more. So the animation,
in the Max explored ways to use the internet to improve his own life and Max explored ways to use.
It makes an opacity fade, so it goes from 0 opacity to 100 opacity. And here it is about 50 opacity, I would say. So what second is that? So it starts
to use the internet to improve his own.
We don't need to be super precise in this case. Let's just replicate it so it's roughly the same. So here we need to automate position and opacity like this. It should take about half a second, the motion. So by the way, there is not much space above his head, so I think we need to change the keyframes here a bit. So this keyframe needs to do like this, and we need to move the dark green background to the top again like this. It's not messed up, okay, it's all good. So I think we can make this a bit smaller like this, right?
Explored ways to use the
like this, yeah. Basically, now what we have to do, let's rename it icon 1. We need to duplicate it a bunch of times. So icon 2 will go above NPC 1's head. Now let's just call this icon, and icon 1 will be for NPC 1, icon 2 will be for NPC 2, and so on. So here we have to do a couple of things. We already have our parameters automated here, so it would be a waste to redo that. So instead, we can just change the anchor points. Firstly, of course, let's move the keyframes a bit to the right, so the motions happen a bit later than the first motion, you see. And now let's just change the anchor point. So we are changing now the final phase of the animation, the final keyframe. So let's move it like this. Yeah, the head of this NPC obscures the icon, so it's behind it. This is the most important thing. Now let's change the anchor point here. Let's just paste the Z anchor point from the previous one. Let's check how it looks.
Explored ways to use the internet to improve it.
Now we just need to duplicate the icons 3 more times for each NPC. But firstly, I think I will need to make them smaller, get into the way of each other. So I make them a bit smaller and I will move the anchor points again like this. And now we have NPC 5 and NPC 9, so let's rename accordingly. We need to make sure that we are doing it for the correct NPCs because they go by twos. So
in the early night college, Max explored ways to use the internet to improve his own life and the life of those around him.
From center to the edge. So this one is called NPC 9, right? So this will be called icon 9. And now we need to make sure, so there are 2 people in this. So, okay, let's just let it be icon 3. So let's move it here a bit later. But as you can see, for some reason, they obscure the NPC figures. That's not good. So we need to move them back until what happens everywhere. Okay, let's move them back like this. So this is the correct distance. And let's put it and here as well. So now it should be all good. Again, anchor points, so they are centered. This is centered. Now we need icons for NPC 5. So let's call this icon 5. And this second NPC 2. Let's move this here, it's like this. And this one will move here. We could have done it the other way around, but no, it doesn't matter too much, to be honest. Okay, and the last 2 icons for NPC 8 and NPC, I guess it will be NPC 1. Yes. Okay, so we need to copy this. Oh shit, I forgot to move the keyframes of the last 2 icons I animated. So let's check out.
Max explored ways to use the internet.
Alright, so this one and this one, the keyframes need to go a bit to the right.
To use the internet.
Looks about right, but I guess like the final motion happens a bit early, so smooth it to the right.
To use the internet to improve it.
Yeah, now it looks super good. Looks perfect, I think.
Write and develop programs for it. And throughout college, Max explored ways to.
And there's 2 more things. So firstly, as you can see,
in the early 90s, Max became fascinated with a gift he received, an early computer system. Max taught himself how to write.
But I will use this one instead, which is called Dust Overlay. I think it looks better than what he used. So just move it to the left a bit. And we need to use the screen blending mode here. And what I also like to do.
In the early 90s, Max became
deep glow effect to particles. So see, it looks a bit better. But we need to decrease the exposure to 0.2. And in this final scene, if we open the original,
in the early 90s,
we can see that these figures, they have kind of a
internet to improve. Explored ways to use the internet to improve his own.
You see, there's some kind of a glow. And I believe that this was achieved by the effect called glow. Not deep glow, but glow. So let's apply it. You see, let's solo the guy and we'll just animate this glow a bit so that it looks as if it's breathing, you know, a bit. So it will go from this to this basically, like this. We need to ease this now and we'll just copy these keyframes to all of our NPCs and let's see how that looks. Let's unsolo our main guy. Where's our main guy? Here he is. We unsolo him and to my surprise, I'm not sure that it looks like I intended it to look. I think these figures just became too bright, so probably what I need to do on the NPCs, I need to up the radius. Okay, let's try that. Oh shit. It looks different for every image because they all have very different resolution. This is why, but still. Let's give them that glow and so our animation ends here. But our main guy should glow the most. So I think I'll just increase the threshold for all these NPCs and just paste it so that they don't glow too much. Yeah, now it looks about right. Some of them are darker, I guess, but that's okay. And also, the final touch
in the early
creating
his own life and the life of those around him.
See that these icons
internet to improve his own life and the life of
just a tiny bit. So this is really easy to do. We just go to our icon like this. We choose position and we do this. Or to make it easier for us, we can just apply wiggle effect so that we can copy and paste it later. So I would say it has probably this setting. Let's see it in context. Yeah, we're checking out icon 1.
Use the internet to improve his own life and the life of those.
About right. Just copy this effect to all the icons. What's this? Icon 11. Okay, just unsolo everything like this. Just copy the wiggle effect to all the icons. And we're done.
Develop programs for. And throughout college, Max explored ways to use the internet to improve his own life.
Let's render this out and let's check out the final result again.
In the early 90s, Max became fascinated with a gift he received, an early computer system. Max taught himself how to write and develop programs for it. And throughout college, Max explored ways to use the internet to improve his own life and the life of those around him.